So today we're going to be talking about the Django REST framework. And again, this is a very useful tool. And luckily, it's very easy to employ into our Django project. So this page, we talk about using Django as an API. That's what we went over yesterday. We're actually going to expand upon our wine project. So this is what we did yesterday also. If you do want to start from scratch, we have the directions, which should be pretty much the same as yesterday. But we're going to assume that you still have your wine project from yesterday that we created. And yeah, so we're going to actually just jump down to our installing Django REST framework section. Pretty straightforward. And then we can kind of see what tools are available to us through this installation. All right, so I'm just going to follow these steps. So I have my wine project here. I've already created my virtual environment. Everything's kind of up and running. So now I'm going to install Django REST framework. So that's pip install Django REST framework, all one word. No typos. All right, so it's going to install that. All right, that was pretty quick. Let's see that. All right, so now that we have Django REST framework, we need to make some modifications to our settings. I'm going to go to my settings file. I'm going to navigate to our installed apps. So we have our wines app that we've created. Here we need to add Django REST framework with underscores. Sorry, not Django. We just need REST framework. All right, so that's another app that we're including in our project. I'm gonna save that. And now let's try to use some of this stuff. So I'm gonna go to URLs. Where's my URLs? Wines. All right, so this is the old way where we create our routes ourselves. So if we kind of read on the page here, Django REST framework is useful because we do this so often. Notice it's a common pattern so that people have kind of noticed that, hey, I'm creating these routes over and over and over again, right, for various objects that we create. Why don't we kind of make this more streamlined, right? So instead of having to do this, for wine, and then let's say I want to add like a new object for juices or maybe just beverages, I don't know. I don't want to keep adding all these paths like this. So this is where we can use something from Django REST framework. In this case, I'm going to import, what is it? REST framework. So this is what we just installed. Routers and import default router. All right, so this is actually going to handle creating the URLs for us. And this is, I guess, both a gift and kind of a drawback in terms of it's going to predefine URLs for us, which is going to look pretty much like this, but we don't really have much control with the default router. They're just going to create routes or URLs kind of like this. All right, so if we want to use that, let's just comment out what we have here. That's what I want to do. There we go. Instead, we're just going to do something like create a router, default router instance. The router will take in register. And this is where we're going to pass in our object. So this will be wines. We're going to use something called the wine view set. And this is not something we've created yet, so we will. And we'll give it a base name of wine. So again, just following along on the page, where were we? Django REST framework. All right, so we're doing the URLs now. So we already have our URLs in our project set up to point to wines.urls. But now we're going to add this portion. So I've included the default router, create an instance. I want to register it with wine view set, which is coming from our views. Again, this is something we still need to implement. And then URL patterns will simply be router.urls. So I guess I could have copied all this. Looks like I'm missing that. I guess it's right there. And then we'll do URL patterns equals router.urls. All right, so much simpler. These URLs are going to include everything that we have here. All right, so that's our routes, or URLs. That's done. Serializers. This
Question, Encore.
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. Did you mean add those parentheses on line 3?
Line 3. Probably not. Nope.
And do you need that little R that's in the README?
I don't think it, but since they have that, I guess I should include it. Yeah, I might as well copy what they have. But yeah, so now we get to serializers. Thank you for finding that. Serializers. This is, again, you probably noticed this pattern that we've gone through where we kind of teach you the hard way and then we show you the much easier way. So we've done that with SQL, where we just like we're writing SQL queries ourselves, and then kind of Django came along and we realized we didn't really have to write raw SQL anymore, and that was much easier. Same thing with like forms. We implemented forms ourselves, and then we realized we could use model forms from Django, and that was much easier. Same story goes with serializers. So we did it the hard way, where we manually created serializers and created the appropriate JSON data. But now we can just use model serializers, and the hard work is done for us already. So let me just copy this so I don't make a mistake. And let's go to our serializer. So again, this is what we had before, where we're creating our serialized data and kind of doing it manually. So instead, we could use, let me break this down here. All right, so the new way versus the old way. All right, so I named my old serializer wine serializer manual, but this is just going to be my wine serializer. All right, so if you kind of compare the code, much more condensed, right? So this looks very similar to what we're doing with our model forms. We just specify the model, in this case it's wine, and then specify the fields that we want to include there. All right, that's it. That's all we had to do. So you guys can definitely decide if you guys want to write it out manually or take advantage of the model serializer that Rust framework offers us. Okay, so that seems fairly straightforward. Then let's go back to our, so we got to update our views. So this is where we use something called model view set, and that essentially will create all the handling for our views or for our URLs. So let me just copy all this. Go to views, and let's see. Let me just put that very top. All right, so we have ones. All right, so we import wine serializer. We import something called view sets from Rust framework, and then we create a wine view set. So this is something we're using in our URLs, so we need to update that include. But otherwise, it's pretty much straightforward. So this is manual way, and this is the Rust framework. All right, so again, kind of just compare all of this code versus just writing something as simple as this, using a view set. All right, so I'm going to go back to my URLs. Again, we're using view set here, so we need to include that. So let's do from wines.views import wine view sets. All right, so we have that view set that we're using here. That's, again, this is going to handle all of the URLs that's automatically generated by this default router. Okay, let's save that. And I think that's all we need to do, right? So, yep, seems it was that simple. So again, just got to install Django Rust Framework, which was a couple of steps, running pip install, including it in our installed apps in our project settings. Then we're up and running. Basically, we need to just update our URLs, our serializers, and our views. Sorry, our views and serializers. And pretty much within like minutes, we've implemented what took probably much longer yesterday when we were doing it the hard way. Yeah, let's actually try this out. So if we run our server, Python manage py run server. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. All right.
So we technically don't have to update our models. We could leave them as is.
Yeah, our models don't change. So I didn't touch anything. Okay. I think one discrepancy I noticed was yesterday we didn't have a created at field. I think that's something that was included on today's page, but not yesterday's page. So I do have it here, but you guys might want to update your models if you want that field. I don't think it's too relevant. It's not being modified by the user. This is just the default value of time zone now. But anyway, yeah, our models didn't change. So the way we're just dealing with the data is what changed. So yep, models stay the same. Our database stayed the same. Nothing changed there. All right, so our server's up. I just started that. Let's go to our path. So copy this and bring a new tab up here. That's because I forgot H. All right, there we go. So Django REST framework provides us with a nice UI where we can interact with our API. So this is very similar to Postman, where we could submit post requests. Because we have a form for posting. Get requests can be done. So again, very, very convenient that Django REST framework provides this for us. So if we wanted to add something, let's add something. So let's go with high C. The price would be, I don't know, $4.99. Description. Okay, so I posted. Seemed like it went through. So if I wanted to see all my wines again, how do I do that? Just do a get. All right, there we go. So now I have two values here. I added this one before, and this is the second one. Okay, so again, this is very similar to Postman. I could use Postman still to make calls to my API, but again, we're able to add new wines or juices, I guess in this case. If we wanted to delete, I'm not sure how we go about doing that. So let's try to delete something. Let's go to 1. All right, so detail not found. That's not good. Okay, let's figure this out. So documentation is, again, very helpful. So I'm going to go to Django REST framework and kind of talk about the things we're using. All right, so they have pretty good documentation. If I go to, let's see, topics, API guide. All right, so one thing we're using are routers. So let's kind of read about routers. So we're using something called default router. This is what it supports for us and kind of, again, pre-configures our URLs. If we did want to customize our URLs, we could use custom routers. I've not actually tried this, but they do provide the ability to specify how you want your URLs to look. So they have a bunch of parameters you can adjust. Again, kind of gets detailed, but you definitely can customize those routes. You're not always locked into them. If you want to customize them, you basically inherit from their base router, and then you can add on to the functionality, right? That's kind of the whole OOP way of doing stuff. Like you have a class, you could override, derive from that class and override whatever you want. So it is doable, but we're using the default router, which basically provides the URLs for us. Okay, let's figure out why I was not able to get to this page. I don't know if my items are different. All right, so it seems like I probably created a wine and deleted it. So I have wine item number 2, which is my Capri Sun. Let's see if wine item number 3 is my high C. Yep, there we go. So we could get to the detail. Again, the URLs are just the same. We have wines, and then when we go to an index that shows us the wine detail, let's say if I want to update, I think I just do this on this page, right? Put update, yeah. So we're going to do a put request instead of a post. So let's update this. Let's say it's not crack the kid. It's probably not appropriate. So basically fruit in a box. All right, so if I do a put request, again, this is the HTTP way of where you have get for reading data. You have post for creating new data. Put is actually used for updating existing data, and then delete is used for deleting existing data. So again, this is more in line with the HTTP protocol standards rather than just using post for, I guess, all three. But this is, again, Django REST framework has that kind of wired in there. So if I do a put, okay, so notice it updated my description, basically fruit in a box. If I want to delete this, I'm sure I can. So delete is right here. Can I actually navigate to delete? That's what I'm wondering. Can I go delete? It looks like that is not allowed.
It would be destroy.
Gotcha. Destroy. Nope. I think the delete is actually going to go back to the same URL. So we're on wine number 3. We're going to submit put requests to here and also delete requests to the same URL. we're not actually going to have those additional, I guess, update or delete paths that we go to. And so it's all because we're using different request types. Again, post, put, or delete. So it's based on those methods, it's going to know what to do, even though it's going to the same URL. So if I hit delete here, it's going to submit a delete action. We also support patch. So that's something we talked about. We've never really done that, but we could probably patch something if we want. So I need to figure out how to do that, but definitely should be doable if I can navigate this.
You have to be careful with the difference between patch and put, because for patch, you can send a single piece of data and it's going to update that single piece of data. But with put, if you don't send all the data for the entire record, you overwrite that record. In other words, that if you miss a value, then you lose that value in your database.
Absolutely. Yep. Again, that's the difference. So we always put, so you guys specify all the values. Patch, again, is a little easier, but you don't want to confuse put and patch. As Brian said, yeah, it's going to cause you issues. Okay, so all this functionality was provided by our router and our view set. So again, very minimal code. We have view set. This takes care of all the magic. It handles, again, creating, updating, creating, reading, updating, and deleting. And our URLs are pre-configured. So again, it's a little different. We don't actually go to like /3/edit or update where it was. Those URLs are kind of pre-configured. So we're posting and putting and deleting to the same URL. And based on the method, a different action is taken. Again, you can configure that. It just requires a little more reading and documentation, using custom routers, and figuring out how you want it to be formatted. So you can figure out the base URL, any prefix, and then, again, I've not actually done this, but they have the documentation for it. They have an example. So we could try it, but I don't want to get too deep into the waters. But yeah, it seems like there's a few other things you might need to add. Okay, what else do we want to look at? So we're looking at routers view set. Let's see if there's any interesting thing on that. So view sets. Yeah, so HTTP list, create, retrieve, update, partial update. So partial update would be your patch, destroy would be your delete. So again, if you wanted to override these, you could. Otherwise, you're going to do a default action. All right, so again, Django REST framework just makes it all that much easier to get up and running. And that's kind of the whole point of Django, right? So Django kind of is like an intimidating friend when you meet them at first. You kind of don't understand your friend, but then you realize your friend is really out there to look out for you and make your life easier. So that's kind of how I view Django. Hopefully you guys are getting more and more comfortable with Django and kind of understanding and seeing like how easy it just makes it to get up and running. You don't have to worry about too much with the details. Don't have to do SQL. Don't really have to do too much in terms of like coding and creating classes. You just got to follow their documentation and kind of use their, their model serializers, model forms. Yeah, the forms, again, 3 lines, 4 lines here. Serializers, same thing, 4 lines and we're done. So you could probably get a website, like an API running, probably in like 15 minutes. You got to follow all the steps, just remember. But otherwise, it seems like you get an object into your database up to the web in no time. All right, so it's good to know the manual way to do it. So you want to know what's going on under the hood. But again, if there's an easy way to do it and you understand the basics, then yeah, definitely use what Django provides because it's meant there to make it easy. So if we go back to our curriculum page, again, kind of just walks you through it, shows you all the things you can do. Effectively, again, this is just like Postman or your admin terminal. You can test out your URLs. So your challenge for tonight is hopefully going to be pretty quick. The school API that we created yesterday, or I guess today, all we want to do is adapt that to use our Django REST framework. And again, that should just minimize your code. So we wrote all the code, but now we just want to replace it with less code and the kind of auto magical code that handles the hard work for us. All right, so that's your challenge for the weekend. Hopefully, again, it doesn't take too much time. As you saw, we were able to kind of adapt our wine code with probably like, what, 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. And then can easily test it with the front end that the Django Rest framework provides for us also. Okay. Any questions on Django Rest framework, how to use it, how to install it? Hopefully, again, the curriculum page should guide you. It's not too many steps, a couple steps for installing, and then basically 3 modifications just to get your project handling the data correctly. Any thoughts, questions, concerns, anything?
For the school API, we're going to have to figure out how to do our models using Django REST framework, right? Since we have associations there.
Yeah, so models, again, models will be the same. Django REST framework does not impact how you create your models. So again, your models, if you created them for your school API, will remain the same, right? So for my wine models, like I didn't touch my models when I included this. You will have to update your serializers. I think that's where the challenge will come in play, because you're going to have, my student serializer is going to interact with my course serializer. So there's going to be slightly different. And if we want to kind of investigate that, again, this is where Google is your friend. So I guess there's Stack Overflow. There's probably documentation on Django REST framework. But yeah, there might be an added challenge when you have 2 models that need to talk to each other. Surprised there's no Django REST framework page for this. I'm sure there is. But I guess there's a Stack Overflow that can get you part of the way there. So Django framework nested serializer. Okay, there we go. Serializer relations. So I bet this page should have what we want in terms of nested relationships. So, okay, so they have a track and album serializer. And I guess this is a little different because this is just nested, as in one album has many tracks, but one track is probably not on many albums. So it's not a many-to-many, but this is a one-to-many. But I believe this should get you on the right track of figuring out how to have those serializers kind of nested or interacting with one another. Yeah, so again, part of the job is reading documentation. So there's many fields through documentation. Yeah, again, a lot of documentation to go through. I'm not exactly sure which part of this will be applicable to us, but they have the many-to-many relationship covered here. So yeah, that will be part of your challenge, I guess. That'll be the new material that hopefully you guys can figure out. And if not, obviously we'll probably go over it on Monday. Any other thoughts? Again, regarding the school API that we did earlier, I know I added a lot. I was kind of surprised there wasn't a lot of questions, but maybe I went too fast, or maybe you guys were all just super smart in keeping up with what I was adding. And yeah, Django REST framework, just definitely get comfortable with it because it just makes development that much more easier. Regarding Heroku, yeah, I ran into some issues. I got to figure out why I wasn't able to commit. But otherwise, you should be able to create a project from the command line and deploy it from your command line. You shouldn't have to go to the Heroku website. But what you can, there's nothing wrong with going to a website, but it's kind of easy to just do it all from your command line. Okay, how are you guys feeling? Good, great, terrific. All right, we'll see how it goes. So on Monday, go ahead. That someone's going to speak up there. Yeah, Monday, we're actually going to get to the matter of actually connecting a React front end to our Django backend. So that's going to, again, put the whole puzzle together. So if we kind of just take a peek at that, week 9, we're done with week 9. Congrats to everybody who made it this far. And then week 10, look at Monday. Yep, so connecting React to Django. There's a few steps we got to go through. There's something about cores, but basically we're going to create a React app and look at our wine data and again display it in a better format. Because obviously showing wine data, just like where we had it here, not really that useful from a user perspective. So we'll create a React app and kind of hook it up and make requests to our wine API. And ideally, our wine API should be on Heroku so that we could access it from anywhere. And likewise, our React app eventually should be on Heroku also, so then we actually have a real website where you could, send a link to your friend. They can go to it and review wines and do whatever they want with your data. Okay, so that'll be Monday, just a preview of next week. And just to, I guess, finish it up, I think Tuesday is the last new material. Tom will be going over Django Authentication. So this is where we're going to actually create tokens using JSON web tokens. And again, this will kind of complete the puzzle of how do you actually secure your site and create user logins. All right, hopefully you guys are feeling good or feeling great or better than great, whatever that might be. Yeah, so longer lecture day today. School API was definitely a longer project. But with that said, hopefully you guys were able to complete School API, or if not, can complete it now. But yeah, so let's kind of stop the recording here.